Wait for the host to start.
Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar today. My name is Susanne Richter-Wills. I will be hosting today's session and we taking you through the next 30 minutes. I'm the VP of ScaleHub, but this is not a session that is about us today. Those of you who have joined us before know a bit of ScaleHub. Allow me maybe few words. We are specialists in the area of collective intelligence to optimize and automate processes all around document processes. We're doing this worldwide. And we're using AI and human intelligence in different combinations. But as I said, today it's not about us, but it's really about a topic that many of our partners and customers alike are talking about. And that's about how to maximize IDP architecture in order to use AI to leverage AI services for higher automation rates. As I said, all in the context of document processing. Now, we are live, but there will be still people joining, and a lot of you will also be later on watching the recording. So allow me a few housekeeping rules while we wait for the last people to join. So the webinar today will be around 30 to 40 minutes long, depending on how many questions you may ask at the end when we have a Q&A session. You can ask questions also throughout the session in the chat, and some colleagues of mine are online. They will be answering them, but hopefully we will also have some interesting questions that we can share with each one of you later on in the session itself. The session actually is recorded, and everybody who's watching today live, but also who registered to actually watch later on, will receive a link. And if you are watching the recording rather than watching live, and your questions have not been answered at the end of the session, then you can reach out to us, and we will be coming back to you with some answers, hopefully with some answers. I can promise you we have answers to everything, but we will try. But please, we are there even after the session and if you're not live. With all of that said, I would like to go and move into the topic of today. And I would like to set the scene for the topic and introduce also today's main presenter, which is Alan Pelz-Sharpe from Deep Analysis. So AI seems to be everywhere, and it potentially is driving many improvement projects. And this is also true for document processing and for many service providers, which form most of the majority of today's audience. And it's clear why. Documents processing is all about getting clean transactional data from documents that drive then thereafter many business processes. And the more these processes are reliable on data, and the more the challenges increase when organizations need them, the more the organization are turning towards what can help to get such tools, to get them quick, to get them reliable, to get them also in at the time when it's needed. And with the very often poor quality input, many now challenges rise in unstructured and therefore previously unknown document content. The turning to AI seems a natural one. And therefore it's no surprise that many see AI as a way forward to increase efficiencies in document processing, and looking at it to maybe replace IDP approaches. Who knows? It was many questions, and when I look at my partner and customer base, some of these questions are quite going in similar directions. One of them I was speaking to only last week, and they asked me whether we as ScaleHub thought that new to market AI and Gen AI solutions will fully replace established legacy IDP tools. Now, to set the context, this customer is actually preparing for an upgrade and is trying to determine whether it's worth investment, and was weighing in whether AI or not could truly manage their complex validation rules. This customer, as many others, is also wondering if AI will replace all human involvement in document processing. So some cite that it's going to be so good that it's going to know all the content going forward, and the human to actually validate and verify data is something of the past. Well, this may be some of the topics that we're looking at today. Others are asking, Is it actually safe to use? What about data protection? Is it affordable? Is it sustainable even? Should AI be used in the cloud to maximize it, or can local solutions provide more security, maybe even more tailored results? So these are many questions that will be addressed today by Alan, I'm very sure. And before we turn over to Alan, let me introduce Alan, and maybe Alan, you can add some words to it. So Alan, you're the founder of Deep Analysis. Maybe you can quickly introduce a little bit about what Deep Analysis is all about.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So again, my name's Alan Pelz-Sharpe. I'm indeed the founder of Deep Analysis. We are an industry analyst firm, which is a research firm, basically. We research the unstructured data and automation market, which is very niche, but very on topic for today. So it's very, very crowded market with hundreds and, I mean, literally, maybe up to about 1,000 companies, technology companies, that is. So very crazy, very crowded field, lots of options out there for people. And that's sort of our job to make sense of that. That's hopefully what we'll do today. We'll make sense of it all for you.
So, and then maybe a few words to yourself. So I understand you have over 25 years experience in the industry. You've been working for a variety of end user organizations like FedEx, Mayo Clinic, Allstate, but also have experience with vendors like Oracle, IBM, startups, which is very topical to, of course, the AI world. You were in the service industry with Wipro, research director at 451 Research. Overall, you've been working, so you're really a broad set, experience.
Yes,
really.
I'm old. Yes, I'm old. I've done lots of things. But one of the important points in there is actually I started off my career with a systems integrator long time ago. And I also worked for a couple of years with Wipro. So the whole sort of BPO services market is very, very close to my heart. So I'm hoping I can sort of put that into the context today around IDP, like why it's really important for these sort of advances, these technology advances, but also practice advances, if that makes sense, right? We're learning how to use these tools. So there's the technology, but there's this world of learning as well going on. So, and yeah, I mean, it's so, we've got a slide up here, but basically it's this dilemma, right? We're in a world where we've got the most advanced AI we've ever had. People are now talking about agentic AI and all sorts of things, right? It's very exciting time for the technology. The reality is, though, that's not where most organizations are at. And if you are a BPO, if you're a service provider, you know the truth of what's really going on in most organizations, right? Very paper-based. And when it's not paper-based, it sort of still is, because it's just an image on a screen and somebody's hand keying stuff in there. So it's not sort of exciting, but we are at this point where, well, we'll probably never get to a true paperless office, right? But we are at a point now where there are big advances and we can do a lot more quickly and a lot more cheaply than we ever could before with documents. So it's a very exciting time. So yeah, what we have to think about when we talk about things like IDP, intelligent document processing, is the technology. That's great, generally speaking, right? The reality of most enterprises and their ability to adopt and adapt to the new technology, that's a bigger challenge. That's a much bigger challenge. Most organizations are going to struggle with that over the coming years. So that's sort of where we're at. And so I said the technology is much better than it ever was. And that is absolutely true. I mean, I see demonstrations and briefings. I mean, I won't name the customer, but there was one last week, a company you would all know in the technology space. And I was just blown away at how far they've come in such a short time when it comes to document processing. But the truth is, we've been doing this a long time, and there's a reason for this slide here. So I hope you all get a chance to download this, because there's a lot of information on the slides coming up, and I'm not going to be speaking to everything. This is more of a resource for you. But we have a long history. We go back believe it or not, right, to almost a century ago, well, actually just over a century ago, we've been doing document processing for a long time. And the truth is, a lot of the time we've been doing it, it's not very good. That's the truth of it. Optical character recognition, missing out decimal points, misinterpreting letters. It's been good, but not good enough, right? So in a lot of situations, you see people who are processing a lot of documents, they're still creating a TIFF image, and then somebody is reading it and manual key entering the information to another system. That's standard. That's normal. If that's your organization today, you're not behind. That's pretty much what everybody else is doing. But the last 5 years, 6 years, I guess, we've had a breakthrough with the use of AI. So the technology that's coming to market now for IDP is not the same. It is really very fundamentally different. It can train very, very quickly. For those of you on the call who've heard of things like zonal, so you had to train to recognize that this is a date, this is an invoice number, this is an address, whatever. You know, those kind of limitations are pretty much gone in the new era of technology. So the quality is way better. That doesn't mean it's 100%. It can't be 100%. Nothing is 100%. People are messy. Documents are messy. There's always going to be something to resolve, but way, way better than we ever had before. But we just did a survey across 5 industries, actually. And this was the average. 45% of all business processes today are still paper-based. Depending on who you share that statistic with, they'll say, oh, yeah, makes sense. I would have thought it had been a bit higher, or they're absolutely shocked, right? So in the world of Silicon Valley, everybody's shocked by this statistic. They can't believe it, but that's the real world out there. And to be blunt about it, that's the opportunity too, right? There's a huge transition underway, and we're really making quite slow progress. 45% of all business processes are still paper-based. And in some sectors, I'm actually going to use supply chain as an example here, it's much higher than that. That's why I'm using it as the example, because it's sort of the extreme. But if you go into the back office operations of a hospital, for example, you probably find something very, very similar, lots and lots of paper. So this is a supply chain example, but I just want to talk about straight through processing. This is sort of the dream, right? This is the holy grail. We get a document and magically everything is processed. No humans are involved. There's no errors, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, even with the most basic of document processes, historically, you might have got that to about 40%, maybe, right? Like everything aligns, the invoice is correct, or the contract is correct, or whatever you're processing, and it matches up perfectly. With modern technology now, we can get that. So I've talked to various people. There's not actually been any scientific benchmarking of this, but the general rule of thumb now is that 70 to 80% is a realistic goal. Okay. Now, again, there will be errors. But that's a massive difference. So if you are a service organization and you can start straight through processing, i.e. zero touch, 30 to 40% more than you could, well, that's a huge opportunity for you on your bottom line, right? You can make more money. You can service more customers. You can do a lot of things with that. That's a huge increase. Again, it's never going to be perfect. That's why you engage with companies like ScaleHub, right? Nothing's ever perfect, but a lot more things can be straight through processed today than ever before. And again, just to give you that, I've seen examples where 70 to 80% is actually quite doable, right? And that's just massive compared to what we had in the past. So here's these stats again, right? I said 40%, 30 to 60%. I think 60 is probably a bit of a stretch. That's got to be near perfect, right? But 70, and people are pushing towards 90. And if you involve companies like ScaleHub, or you have an awful lot of people on hand to check things, the human in the loop aspect of AI, then yeah, you potentially, for some processes, you can get it up near 90%. So the reason I'm stressing this so much is those percentage points are money. For you, for your client, for whatever. These are dramatic improvements on the older technology. Now, when I talk about the technology, I use terms like IDP, intelligent document processing, which is basically document capture with AI, right? But the truth is there's probably more elements involved if you're to adopt this. There'll be an automation element. There might be RPA, which robotic process automation. You may be experimenting with the new sort of agent-based things. There's a lot going on that surrounds this. So the IDP, the document capture and processing bit, is just one element, essentially, in a much more exciting and ambitious technology stack. And that will depend on your needs, what your customers are requiring, what you're processing. But again, for some companies, this is just going to make a huge difference on their profit margin. And for others, it actually does open the door to expand their business. So it's not just about adopting new technology because it's cool. It's time to try and test these things now. Already mentioned this really, but it really is about balancing human and artificial intelligence. You'll see slides like this come up everywhere, but the truth is a lot of the time people are not being completely honest. There is an ambition, certainly by many, to just take the human out of the equation, right? Let's just automate everything. It'll all be automated. I don't know, maybe that will work in some places, maybe in some elements of manufacturing. We've already seen that. In truth, the world is very, very, very messy. Okay, documents are messy. So I gave the example of supply chain. Again, it could be healthcare, it could be government, it could be anything. I'm just giving this as one example. But you take a document like a bill of lading in supply chain, and there's a pretty high likelihood that something's wrong on it, or it's been lost, or it's illegible, or it's whatever, right? So again, this new technology, this IDP technology, the sort of third and fourth waves, as we're calling it, of technology progress over the last few years, which is including now things like generative AI. It's not about hyper automation. It's not about automating everything. It's about automating more and doing it incredibly accurately. But you'll always need that human in the loop. And just to pick up on the question or statement that Susanne made early on, a lot of people are worried about the ethics, and they are worried about, does this mean we don't need to hire people? The truth is, for document processing, you probably won't change the amount of people you hire. That's probably the reality. You'll just take on more business, right? You'll be able to handle more business. And from the ethical perspective here, we could have a whole separate workshop on that, which we haven't got time for today. But the truth is, the kind of AI that we're using in IDP, it's trained to read an invoice. It's trained to read a medical document. It's trained to read a contract or whatever. There really aren't really many ethical issues here. Those are more related to general purpose AI, like OpenAI and Gemini, that have arguably been trained, well, not arguably, they have been trained on what's been pulled from the internet, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of ethical issues around that and accuracy issues. This kind of technology is a niche, and generally speaking, you don't have to worry about that. That's a sort of different thing. But I'll sort of just talk for a couple more slides, and then we'll chat and see if there's any questions, etc. But yeah, I mean, so straight through processing AI, let's just break it down into very, very simple, practical terms for you, right? Automated data extraction. Again, we've been able to extract data from documents for a long time, but not to this level of sophistication. That has just not been possible. and the ease of doing it as well. A lot of these systems can be trained and up and running in a matter of weeks, not months or years. And because it's AI, and this is a really important thing to think about, is the value and the accuracy and the quality of the results from your AI system, assuming you've deployed it properly and manage it properly, is actually going to get better and better and better and better and better over time, which is the exact opposite of the older technologies, which were not too bad on day one, and by 6 months in, a year in, everybody's sick of it, right? Because it's a sort of downward trend with AI. Remember, it's learning, so it's actually going to get better over time. Data validation and enrichment. So if we just take the enrichment point there, the reality is, like I said, on a bill of lading or whatever kind of document, there may be things which weren't filled in properly, but it doesn't invalidate the whole document. And so again, AI here is able to actually add some of those missing elements back, make sure that everything is correct, that this does align with this other document, this purchase order or whatever. Can do that really, really well. Real-time error correction, I should say, which is phenomenal, right? So the AI can make some corrections as well. If you're using a service like ScaleHub or people within your own organization, the goal here is that basically real-time error correction means that simple errors, right? Simple, straightforward errors can be corrected automatically. We only need to use the humans where we're really unsure, right? Where this is a true exception. Not sure what's going on here. Let's get an expert to have a look at it. And integration, right? So I mentioned before, if you are looking at using IDP software in your organization, it's one component. It's probably going to integrate with what you already have. You may be bringing in more automation. So be a little bit careful when you hear about people talking about AI projects, right? Because AI is everywhere now. It's everywhere and it's nowhere, if that makes sense, right? It's an element, it's a factor, it's an important factor. But what's pretty cool about most of these tools is when they were built, they knew that they were just a piece in the puzzle, right? So they've been built so that they can integrate really pretty quickly and easily. So errors and exceptions, this seems like a really odd slide, but coming back to the ethics and the people and the use of AI and everything, what's interesting is historically in our industry, everything's been calculated, or business cases, I should say, are typically calculated on an ROI, right? Return on investment. The technology is going to cost me this much, but in time I'm going to earn this much money, so that's my return on investment. It's worth doing, right? So people like me, industry analysts, a lot of consultants have never been comfortable with that calculation, never been comfortable with it at all. Because on the one hand, you have a side of fixed costs, right? This is what things cost. I know I've got real costs. And on the other side of your balance sheet, you're just projecting. You're just hoping this will all work out and it'll be fantastic. What we recommend, particularly for anything to do with document processing, is a metric for you to use are these two: reduction in errors, and by sort of default, reduction in exceptions. So reduction in errors. If you, let's just imagine somebody is manually key entering a zip code or an address or a value with their fingers on the keyboard, there's a likelihood there will be errors, right? The technology today is going to be pretty much close to error-free at that initial capture point. So if you dramatically reduce your number of errors at the beginning of your document process, that's going to pay for the project straight off. Like, that's massive, because resolving those errors later on is costly, very costly. And exceptions, again, if you're spending your time dealing with 40% of cases or whatever you're processing are exceptions, that's a huge workload and a huge cost. Again, if we can reduce the number of exceptions by, say, 20%, these projects are cheap. These projects pay for themselves in almost no time. Slight exaggeration there, but the general gist of it, they are very, very good value for money. Yeah. So errors and exceptions are two really good metrics to focus on. As I say, the ROI, return on investment calculation, is a little bit more questionable. So I'm going to speed up a little here. I've got a couple more things, but back to the ethics things, right? Public LLMs, large language models, right? Easy, anybody can access them, right? They know lots about lots of things. They're dirt cheap to use-ish. That's going to change in time. So public LLMs like OpenAI or whatever you may well have looked at, you may have played with, ChatGPT, etc., and they've got a lot going for them. The reality is, though, there are some serious security risks using this kind of approach. There's not much you can do to customize it. They're not going to let you. And there are absolutely compliance issues around privacy, data accuracy, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's pluses and minuses there. More and more people are sort of looking at, and if you're a BPO, you may well be taking this approach of utilizing more of a private large language model. Now, that could be something you build yourself based on all the data you've accumulated over the years. But the point is, it's specific and it's secure and it's customized and relevant, right? What people might do is use a sort of hybrid. So if you might have heard of terms like RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So you might use OpenAI for something, but then you'll use your private LLM data for others. So this is certainly a major trend at the moment in enterprises to be exploring this approach. But it can be costly, right? It can be costly. And of course, it's yours. So you've got to maintain it. You've got to look after it, right? And then I come to the one in the middle here, limited knowledge scope. It's its strength and weakness, right? So if you've built an LLM that knows everything about, I don't know, private aeroplanes insurance in Germany, right? So, okay, it's an expert on that. It knows nothing about anything else. That's its strength and its weakness. It's going to be really good at that one job, but of course you can't typically expand it out to other things, right? Because its knowledge is that thing. So coming up to the last slide here, for me at least, a simple thing to think about with any kind of compliant or secure or sensitive information in document processing is things like redaction, right? It's really hard to do it well. There's redaction in the sense of actually redacting a document visibly, but we're also talking about this in terms of how we process data, etc. And this is something that you will typically have more human involvement in here. But again, the AI can absolutely help. These are the kind of things which I'm giving this as an example, this redaction challenge, to sort of counter that. We can automate everything. The world's going to be perfect. Everything's going to be 100% and it'll be easy. No, there's going to be lots of work here. So for BPOs, for services, agencies and bureaus and whatever, there's tons of work here. Let's go back to the 45% of business processes are still paper-based. There is an enormous amount of opportunity in the market now. The technology is actually really good. I'm not going to sit here and recommend one over another, right? But they're all pretty good, and some of them are outstanding, even at things like handwriting, right? Working in multiple languages. It's pretty amazing, the advances there. But the real world has to conflict with that, doesn't it? Because that's how the real world works, right? So you've got clients with messy stuff and messy processes. There's going to be a lot of compliance issues. It's going to be this. Nothing's ever going to be 100%. So this sort of human AI balance is always going to be with us, at least for the foreseeable future. I can't see that ever changing, to be honest. So lots of challenges, but those challenges are also business opportunities for a lot of people. So yeah, so that's sort of been what I've been stressing, is that by the way, if you hear a technology vendor saying to you that their AI system or their IDP solution is 100% accurate, I suggest you talk to somebody else, because that's not true. It's not possible. It never will be possible. But we can get things really very good. There's a difference, though, between very good and 100%, right? 100% accurate isn't happening anytime soon. So I think I'm still on time, and I'll take a breath and
Very much on time. Thank you, Alan. And we've got a few questions actually have come in, but just a reminder to everybody, the chat is still open. So if you got more questions, please keep them coming. But I'll go back to the very beginning of what you said, Alan. There's a question actually about understanding. You talked about agentic AI. So can you explain actually what that is? How different to, or how's it different to, or what has it got to do with IDP? Seems to be like some confusion out there, or not?
Yeah. So just to be clear, if you ask anybody to define agents and agentic AI, you'll probably get a different answer from each one, right? Because it's just a term that's getting thrown around. But there is a reality, there is a logic to it. Okay, so an agent is really, so if we think about IDP, so document processing, associated automation, right? So the theory here is you can have an agent, so it's autonomous, it's smart, it knows what to do with the data, it just does that job. So we'll see those in customer service, for example. So taking a chat bot, but making it way smarter and able to deal with more and more complex inquiries. The goal, though, over the long term, and this is where there's a huge amount of investment, is this concept of agentic AI. So basically, yes, to be blunt about it, replacing human roles with AI bots, agents that are decision making, right? They're not just following a set of rules. They're able to figure things out and make decisions on your behalf. Here's the thing, as an industry analyst, I'm talking to like everybody. I'm here in Las Vegas at a conference. We've been talking about agentic AI for the last day, right? Everybody's talking about it. Is anybody doing it? Not so much. It's still very, very, very early days, right? It's great theory. There's some really interesting stuff. Salesforce, for example, they've made a big noise and they're doing some interesting stuff. But super early days. And honestly, if you're a BPO, if you're a service organization, yeah, okay, I think that's way down the road before that's really tested out and works properly. So I think we're currently with RPA bots, IDP. These are the things which have been around a few years now, but they're only now truly getting implemented and used.
Thank you. Before I lead you to one of the next questions, actually, is also what my customer asked me last week. Is it time to throw the old IDP out and go for all the new stuff and new generation AI, or is it something to supplement and to add on to by established?
Yeah, I mean, it will. I mean, the truth is, it depends on what contracts you're signed up to, how complicated that integration and implementation is, right? Because it's going to cost money to rip and replace that. So I think there's a dependency there. But what I would say is, I mean, I'm serious about this. The difference between the document processing technologies of say 10 years ago, and a lot of people, by the way, are still using software of 10 years, 20 years in some cases, right? So that's not uncommon. The quality, the accuracy, the speed, the cost is just so massively improved. What I would say is I think everybody should at least be testing these things out, right? I mean, you can listen to me, you can read our research, you can read others, but nothing's going to convince you more than trying these things out on your own data. And that there's plenty of vendors out there who will happily let you test on your data because they're pretty sure of the outcome. They're pretty sure you're going to go, wow. So yeah, should they rip and replace everything today? Probably not. But I think they should actually be making plans and testing things out and figuring out what works for them now, because they will be moving.
Now, as you seem to have a lot of service providers listening in today, so there's one of them saying that our customer base is so diverse, it's hard to see how AI for document capture would work. Would we need to install different AI systems for each client?
Yeah, it's a really good question. No, probably not. Well, here's the thing. Every customer thinks they're unique. I always have done. And the truth is they're not, right? They overlap enormously. If you, I used to do quite a bit of consulting in insurance, for example, right? every insurance company is absolutely convinced it's completely different to its competitor. The truth is 90% of what goes on is exactly the same. So no, you probably don't have to have a separate AI for each customer, but it does depend on the use case, right? If this is a big customer who's spending a lot of money, maybe you would train up, right, or corral a set of data which is relevant just to that customer to get their accuracy levels, to get their straight through processing levels up a bit further. No, I don't think you need to buy a different AI for each one, but the truth is to train them now is really pretty quick and easy. So you might have a separate instance for each customer. That's possible, but you don't need to be buying different AI systems.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, looking at some questions. Now, there's a lot of questions around affordability. So again, it seems to, for me, from my experience coming from the service provider space, I mean, there have been many organizations still do many things manual. And then there came IDP, and then there came RPA. And so, you talked about that it's going to bring a lot of more straight-through processing, and I think you probably kind of touched upon it in your discussions, but affordability. So how affordable is AI? You talked about earlier, I heard you say public LLMs are relatively cheap still. So is there a hidden cost? Is it affordable? How do you see the development cost-wise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because we're going through a period now where people are experimenting, right? So there's a lot of talk about AI. A lot of people are experimenting. Not many people are actually spending serious money on it at the moment, right? They're just figuring out what they want to do and how they're going to do it. So at the moment, actually, the cost for most IDP solutions or RPA solutions is actually quite affordable. Prices aren't that high because we're in a phase where they want to attract customers, right? They don't want any obstacles to customers. So they'll negotiate. If you have a big contract with a traditional capture software company, they'll be happy to negotiate under the price of that. In time, will it stay cheap? Probably not, right? And we touched on the agent thing. That's one of the challenges there because the pricing model for that is transactional. So each time you use it, you get charged, and that's difficult to plan for. So again, I think I'd say the next year or two is the time to test, to maybe deploy, to get relationships in place, because like anything else, the price probably will go up as there's more and more adoption, and it will get more expensive.
Yeah, maybe I can share one anecdote from our customer base. So we've been working with one particular customer for many years. And, where does AI start in a sense? But we're looking at the latest advances now and local LLMs. And so with the possibilities that they can achieve, certainly the technology cost is comparable at the end of the day because you achieve more straight-through processing and, your staff is utilized different ways. What they, however, did, right, if they set things up for their entire document volume that they have to process, they compared the electricity cost they would have. So currently they have the electricity cost in their infrastructure center of around maybe one household or 3 households equivalent in energy. And with latest Gen AI approaches, they're coming up to 300 households.
Yeah.
So that is a cost that is hidden if you first look at it. That's certainly something that can explode if you're taking into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely, cost-wise and ethics-wise. By the way, there's a whole sort of list of things there. But when I was saying, people are sort of building their own sort of private LLMs, they're probably better described as small language models, right? Because they have a tiny fraction of what an OpenAI has. The difference being all that's in that language model is what's relevant for this job. So you shouldn't have those same concerns, right, about using massive amounts of power just to, yeah, you're right. The public LLMs in the long term are probably not sustainable for this kind of work. and they're arguably not the best choice in the first place anyway.
So I am conscious of time. We promised to be on time, but I've got one more question to you, Alan. And so I think that not every topic you raised, I think we can go into hours and hours of discussions. There's so much more to explore. But if you could summarize, maybe for you, the 3 takeaways from all the things you covered today, what would they be?
I think number one is if you are in the business of processing documents, right, and you're not looking at this technology now, you really should be. I mean, you really, really should be. Whether it's a free trial, whether it's inviting somebody in to work with your data, because this is work. This isn't going to happen overnight, right? It needs planning, it needs costing, it needs testing. So you should be doing that right now. I think the second thing is to recognize that it's not all about reducing headcount, right? It really isn't. A much stronger metric for document processing in general is identifying and removing errors from as early on in the process as possible. That's the biggest sort of return on investment. And then thirdly, we've talked about things like large language models. We've talked about generative AI. We talked about agentic AI. We talked about all these things. Don't worry too much about it, because most of it's just talk. There's a lot of cool things going on, but in our world, if I can call it that, of document processing, this isn't wild stuff. This is well proven, well tested, highly deployed technology that's been around a few years now and works. So separate our world from the broader sort of craziness around AI, because our industry is in a pretty good place.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, if there's more questions out there, you've got my contact details on here, but I'll be sure I'll pass your messages to Alan and we will get back to you. So please keep them going, keep your discussions going, and also please reach out to ScaleHub anytime if you want to see some AI with you and with a new way of humans in the loop in action, so we can share some more anecdotes and of course use cases with you. The recording will be coming, and hopefully you enjoyed the session. Thank you all very, very much for your time. Thank you, Alan, for sharing your thoughts and your insights, and I wish you all a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.